Do you think that race plays a part in wealth distribution, or either a mindset that you can't
Today?
or cannot? Yeah.
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. Hey, you and we're proof. Why would race have anything to do with it? Put your mind to what you want to do and go for that. It's kind of like religion to me. It's a good excuse for not getting there.
You know, I said, and it's probably get me in trouble, but I said to some of my colleagues recently, so I know that it's an issue, but it seems like every single day on television I'm talking about race, and it's because of the news cycle, it's in the news, but sometimes I get so tired of talking about it, I want to just go, this is over, can we move on?
And if you talk about it, it exists.
Right.
Yeah. It's not like it exists and we refuse to talk about it, but making it a bigger issue than it needs to be is a problem.
And, you know, incarceration rates in America has been a problem, especially as opposed to minorities. And Roman delves into the issues around the legal system. Do you think we've made any headway in the legal?
I think it's more important to make headway in our own house. By the time the system comes into play, the damage is done. They're not locking up 7-year-olds. I was in Chicago a couple of 3-4 weeks ago, and we saw these little kids on bikes with masks on the side of their head, like 5 or 6 of them. And the driver said, yeah, they're little yummies. I said, who? He said, little yummies. Look up, Google Lil Yummy. Lil Yummy was an 11-year-old murderer.
Wow.
And you look at his picture, you'll see the headshot of him, and he's like this. And he got murdered at 11 by a 14-year-old.
Wow.
Who's doing life now, and a 16-year-old.
That makes no sense.
You blame the system? Where was his father?
Black History Month, you find
ridiculous.
Why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? Well, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
It starts in the house. It starts in the home. And yeah, well, my father got locked up. Well, where was his father?
Yeah.
You know, like I did talk about my 3 closest friends, and they did, 15 to 25. One did 28, this and that. I was the only one of the 3 that had a father in my life, even though my parents were together. But I still had a father who was a gentle man and a good example, and they didn't. We can blame the system if we want, but they didn't lock any of us up at 7.
Yeah.
We were all doing enough to get locked up at 13. My parents sent me in another direction. They didn't have anybody to help them, and they kept doing what they was doing, and the system got them. So I don't, the system is rigged, but why? All the more reason not to help it.
What's to be gained? You stop for one split second to think burning and looting doesn't help you in any way.
The number one problem domestically facing this country is a breakdown of the family. And President Obama said it. I didn't. A black kid, or kid, not just a black kid, a kid raised without a dad is 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crimes, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. So you're far more likely to end up in jail without having a dad than you are because of a white racist cop.
Prime example, I got pulled over by the police, come over to my window, flash his light in my face, hand on my pistol. I can handle that 2 ways. I can start yelling and screaming and tell him he a racist and he don't know me. You're doing this wrong. Or I can say, yes, officer, no, officer, or we done, officer. And both of them are going to have drastically different outcomes.
Half the homicides in this country are committed by and against black people. Last year, there were 14,000 homicides, not talking about suicides, I'm talking about homicides. Half of them were black, 96% of them black on black of that 7,000. Where's the Black Lives Matter people on that?
I understand y'all upset, but like it was already said, I doubt y'all half as upset as I am. So if I'm not over here wilding out, if I'm not over here blowing up stuff, if I'm not over here messing up my community, then what are y'all doing?
I will always continue to say that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating, I'm still convinced that nonviolence is the most potent weapon available to oppress people in their struggle for freedom and justice. I feel that violence will only create more social problems than they will solve.
Let's switch it up, y'all. Let's switch it up. Do this peacefully. Please. My brother moved here from Houston, and I used to talk to him on the phone. He loved it here. He started driving truck. He was good. So I highly doubt. No, I don't know. I know he would not want y'all to be doing this.
So I will continue to condemn riots and continue to say to my brothers and sisters that this is not the way. Continue to affirm that there is another way.
Said, I don't fucking support the Black Lives Matter movement. At the end of the day, motherfucker, you know how many black people voted for fucking Donald Trump? You don't like what the fuck I say, get off my fucking page. You motherfuckers come all the way to my page, bitch ass niggas, fuck out of here. I had to bury my son because of black on black crime. 4 fucking years old. I had to bury my man because of black on black crime. I had to bury my brother because of black on black crime. Fuck your Black Lives Matter. Fucking respect the badge. Nigga, the police tell you get on the fucking ground, you lay on the fucking ground. Respect the fucking badge. That's the problem. Ain't no fucking order in this fucking world. Fuck you and your Black Lives Matter. All lives fucking matter.
Because people don't know how to handle their anger. They out here shooting people and acting a fool, and nobody's holding them accountable. And I don't know if will they catch the people who did this? Are they going to get justice? Probably not. 83% of the homicides are unsolved in Chicago, Illinois. That's one part of one city in one state in the United States of America. And y'all talking about police brutality. Let me give you more stats. In 2019, there was only 9 unarmed black people who were shot by police in 2019. Guess how many were shot in Minneapolis or Minnesota as a state? 1. And just because you're unarmed don't mean you're not a deadly threat. So just for the sake of argument, just say all of them were wrongfully shot. There's 44 million black people in this country. In 2019, 9 of them were shot by police. 7,000 or so of them were killed by other black people. And in the tunes of hundreds of thousands have died from heart disease and other ailments that y'all won't even bring up, and just claim you care about black lives.
What is racism?
I don't know. Racism, if you go back and see what people like Martin Luther King and Bayard Rustin and the other civil rights leaders thought the word racism meant in the early 60s, they said that it means when one person says to another, I don't recognize you as the same as me because of your race. That's a very intuitive definition for most people. No doubt it's blurry at the edges, like any concept is, but it's pretty clear to people what that kind of racism means. But then in 1967, there was a book written called Black Power by Stokely Carmichael and Charles Hamilton, which used the phrase institutional racism for the first time, which, there's many synonyms for it: structural racism, systemic racism. And the idea here was that racism is not reducible to individuals. It's not reducible to the attitudes that one human being holds towards another, whether conscious or not, but it somehow is a feature of the system itself. And so what that has done is, I think it's, as Douglas Murray often says, a writer I admire, the anti-racist movement and the anti-fascist movement has had a supply and demand problem, which is that the number of true racists and fascists used to be huge, and now it's very, very small. And like any movement that actually achieves its aims, any movement that is in favor of reducing something, to the extent that it's successful, it obviates the need for its own existence. It's a sad paradox of laudable organizations. If you're Mothers Against Drunk Driving, to take a random example, and you actually succeed in reducing drunk driving by 90%, you kind of eliminate the need for your own existence, which is, no kind of reward for doing great work. So I'm sympathetic to that paradox, but what it's meant is that the definition of racism has expanded and expanded and expanded to the point where now, basically anything can be called racist, and no one will challenge it. If white people move into a neighborhood, that's gentrification and it's racist. If white people move out of a neighborhood, that's white flight and it's racist. Much of it doesn't make sense. It's not the kind of racism that the civil rights movement was about fighting. And frankly, it diminishes the power of the word racism, which is a very important word.
Some of the staff there, African Americans, I gather, I'm just talking about what I read in the newspaper, said that they were put physically in danger by the piece that their editor decided to run in their newspaper, because I suppose they're Black and they might be covering or participating in demonstrations, and then the federal troops might somehow fire on them and then they might be hurt. How absurd is that? How absurd is that? Running an editorial puts somebody in danger because it advocated a position that you disagree with, a position that I don't agree with myself. But goodness, you've got people saying that they're afraid to go. I'm talking about people like you and me, okay? Make the same income, live in the same neighborhoods, wear the same clothes, have the same occupations. Talking about they feel physically threatened to be in the presence of a police officer. That's hysteria. It's hysterical. Okay, it's like saying I won't leave my house because I'm going to be struck by lightning. Okay, the idea that that incident with Mr. Floyd somehow is emblematic of the experience of African American is ridiculous. It's completely disconnected from reality. Okay, no one wants to say this. How do you end up in a conflict with the cops? How did that happen? How does that happen? You actually have to do something. I'm not blaming Mr. Floyd. Please don't get mad at me. I'm just making an obvious point that the cops don't just drag you out of your vehicle and start choking you, man. Okay. Now, what's my point? My point is simply this. What happened to him is unlikely to happen to you unless you end up in a similar disputation with the cops.
Maybe if the cops get changed after this time, after a while, you and I won't have anything to talk about anymore. That's the only good thing I can see coming out of this. Maybe that's just the way it has to happen. Maybe we're being too picky.
And what is it? It's just going to fall from the sky? Is it osmosis? I mean, how is the change going to come about?
Because you can't fool all the people all the time. And if there is a tendency for people who grow, very quickly, you grow up Black, you might fall into this line of seeking warmth through pretending to be oppressed. That is a perfectly human thing. It may, let's say that happens to every second Black person growing up in the United States, especially 1 degree. What enables it in 2020, when it's so obvious that things are nothing like they were 50 years ago, is the cops. And you really might have some sort of experience with the cops, but even if you don't, you put yourself into that narrative. If the cops never did anything like that, you'd have to be crazy to, in 2045, still be walking around talking about white supremacy just because a white person looked at you funny or you didn't get a promotion or something like that. It just wouldn't make, it would make so little sense that people couldn't fall into it because there wouldn't be something theatrical and in your face to enable it. That's what the cops is. That's my guess. Where does he get this analysis? He's not a sociologist. No, I'm guessing. But it's my sense of how things seem to work throughout social history. It's just my guess. You think I'm too optimistic? You think they come up with something else?
I think it's going to, if it unfolds, yeah, I think you're too optimistic. I think we're in deep doo-doo. But I
how are we out here in the streets yelling Black Lives Matter, but we don't even act like they matter? Like, we really don't. Look at the numbers. Look at what's happening in our communities. We don't act like our lives matter until a white person does something. What's up, everybody? My name is Amir Odom, and I'm here to talk to you about the 3 reasons why I dislike Black Lives Matter. Now, before we get started in this video, I do want to say that I was a part of Black Lives Matter, and I have been to a couple of their marches. They did spur up a lot of political activism within me, but as I've grown up and as I've just been researching a lot more and coming to my own conclusions, I've realized that I just really dislike Black Lives Matter. And so this video is outlining, 3 reasons why I dislike them, but more so why I've kind of stepped away from them. My number 1 reason is that there's no accountability held on Black people. If Black Lives Matter is so focused on accountability and injustices, then we really would be talking about the Black on Black crime. We would be talking about what's going on in our inner cities. Just pause for a second and think. How many people do you know that have been shot and killed? And how many of those people have been shot and killed by another Black person instead of a racist or a cop? Like, let's stop looking at the media and looking at Black Lives Matter telling us that we're being shot down and gunned down, when in reality, a lot of us know more people shot by our own than a cop or a racist. And I know that's for me and all my friends, and if you just look at the data, it speaks for itself. There is a 0.00004% chance that I'm going to get shot unarmed by the police as a Black man. 0.00004. The likelihood of me getting shot by a cop unarmed is the same as me getting struck by lightning.